The Environment Agency has warned that the weekend's heavy rainfall will lead to an increased risk of flooding in Guildford and Leatherhead over the next few days. Temporary flood defences have been put in place in both areas as river levels remain extremely high. Some businesses are already flooded and there are fears about more damage to come. Our correspondent Simon Harris is in Surrey.
It should be somewhere to watch the world go by, but not today. The banks of the River Wey in Guildford are a no-go area. The river has turned into a lethal torrent, leaving the town bridge as one of the few safe spots to get a good view.
You expect it if you live in the middle of Guildford. It does flood. Not usually as bad as this though.
Personally, I've never seen it like this before. It's terrible because the White House pub, it's actually gone into their store.
The pub garden is now a water feature, complete with floating beer barrels and the odd hazard sign stating the obvious. For Beatrice Pereira and her colleagues behind the bar, it's a challenge.
Our cellar is getting a little close, which is a shame because that's where the beer is and no one wants to go without beer. So hopefully that is fine. No food. Well, we have very limited menu today because our walk-in fridge is slightly flooded as well.
A few hundred metres upstream, there are no customers at another pub, the Britannia.
If you can look down there, you see on the stairs, it's creeping up the stairs. So luckily we've got the flood defences up, so should be prepared, fingers crossed.
In a nearby multi-storey car park, the entire ground floor was underwater. Temporary flood barriers have been put up to protect 100 properties here in Guildford, as well as in Godalming and Leatherhead. For now, this is a waiting game with people here wondering, is this as bad as it gets, or is there worse to come? Guildford Council is relying on advice from the Environment Agency.
They have said that they don't think the full amount of water's come through yet because we have to wait for it to come from higher up the stream. So usually it's another 12 hours before we get the full amount of water.
So it could get worse?
It could, yes.
Every time there's a storm we rush around sandbagging places.
Tonight there are flood alerts in place on both the River Wey and River Mole as parts of Surrey wait for the fallout from Storm Dennis. Simon Harris, ITV News, Guildford.
Good evening. Britain has left the EU, but the fact that a majority of Londoners voted against breaking away remains unchanged. While the government continues to negotiate our future relationship with Europe, the Mayor has taken matters into his own hands. Sadiq Khan has been in Brussels today trying to convince top negotiators London should be allowed to keep their EU citizenship. With his mind possibly on another vote, he said he was still heartbroken by Brexit. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has been travelling with the Mayor and joins us now from Brussels. Simon.
Duncan, Sadiq Khan said today that he accepts Brexit has happened and now wants to make it work for Londoners. But he was always an enthusiastic cheerleader for Remain and a big fan of the single market and freedom of movement. So Brexiteers are likely to be suspicious of his motives after this away day to the heart of the EU. It's not a new idea, but it's one Sadiq Khan was hoping to sell on a trip to Brussels today. The Mayor wants Londoners to be allowed to bypass Brexit and keep their status as citizens of the European Union.
There are many of us in London and indeed across our country who still have a connection with the EU even though we've left.
So how would it work? Would we have two passports?
It could be either a stamp in your passport, it could be a separate document. That's one of the things we want to raise with Brussels. We want to make sure that's one of the things they discuss with our government when they begin negotiations next month.
Sadiq Khan met the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, but we weren't allowed to ask him what he thought of the idea. There was another meeting with the President of the European Parliament, but again no questions. However, one senior MEP who backs the idea admitted it might not find favour across Europe.
Let's be very frank about it. We need to do a lot of work here in Europe to convince member states about that. Because most member states think that, European citizenship, you can only have it as a consequence of your nationality.
This was probably the Mayor's final foreign trip before he asked Londoners to re-elect him in less than 3 months' time. Whatever the merits of what the Mayor calls associate citizenship, however realistic or unrealistic it might be, it's clear his message here wasn't just aimed at EU leaders. It was as much a pitch to Remain voters in London, whose support he wants on May the 7th. His main rival will be the Conservative candidate Sean Bailey. Back in London, he was dismissive of the noises coming from Brussels.
We had 3 teenagers stabbed over the weekend. One of those teenagers is fighting for his life. The mayor should be here helping the Met sort that out. The mayor has absolutely no powers to deliver anything from Europe, but he does have the power to make the streets safe if he wants to.
Those critics of mine who want to criticise me should at least give tribute to the progress I've made as a mayor, batting for London, but also standing up for London.
So your trip here is not a waste of time?
Well, I think we've already made progress in relation to standing up for London.
While he was here, the mayor took a ride on the Brussels Metro Elizabeth line. Unlike his Elizabeth line, this one is open for business and carrying passengers.
Simon, let me just pick you up on something you said there in your report. How realistic is this plan?
Well, there are certainly huge hurdles to overcome. Associate citizenship does appear to be a backdoor way of allowing freedom of movement, which the government in London is certainly unlikely to allow. And will other EU countries really allow British people to enjoy the benefits of citizenship without being in the EU? But it is true there are senior figures here in Brussels who are enthusiastic about the idea. But contrast that with what one former close aide to Theresa May said today when he described Sadiq Khan's mission to Brussels as pointless posturing.
Simon Harris in Brussels tonight, thank you very much. Next tonight, plans to overhaul the immigration system are causing concern and a fair amount of criticism because London relies so heavily on workers from other countries. The government wants to cut the number of low-skilled migrants entering Britain and stop businesses using cheap labour from Europe. But how exactly would that work in a city where so many areas depend on foreign workers? Healthcare, hospitality, retail, construction and so many more. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has been trying to find out.
My name is Vasilika Dăineanu. I am from Romania.
My name is Nedeauca and I'm from Bulgaria.
My name is Turcu Georgiana and I'm from Romania.
You only have to listen to voices on the factory floor to realise the value of migrant workers to the rag trade. But under the new points-based immigration system, they're classed as lower skilled and the government doesn't want them.
I think it's actually quite insulting to my ladies here. They are highly skilled. Whether or not it falls into the category of what government believes is actually irrespective. They should come round here and look at the girls and how they're working.
Lynn Hollingsworth is one of the veterans in the clothing factory in Haringey. After 41 years, there's nothing she doesn't know about the mysteries of the sewing machine, and she could probably run up a ball gown with her eyes closed. She certainly doesn't think of herself as low-skilled.
I can use most of these machines in here, so that needs a skill to use most of these machines, like buttonholes, buttons and things like that. You have to have a skill to use these machines.
What do you think of the government describing people as low-skilled workers like you?
I think that's disgusting.
But in one sense, Lynn is also unusual here. 9 out of 10 of her colleagues came from abroad. Most of the workers here have been given permission to stay in the UK. But under the new rules, many of them wouldn't have been allowed in. From next year, so-called skilled workers will need 70 points to get a visa. Speaking good English will earn them 10 points. A job offer paying at least £25,600 will give them 20 points. And if it's an occupation where there's a high demand, like nursing, that's also worth 20 points.
Ending this complete focus that we've had as a nation for decades, by the way, for too long, on low-skilled workers coming to the UK. We can now focus on the brightest and the best, the skills that our country, our labour market and our economy rightly needs.
What made you come here?
I come here for money because it's not enough. Because I got one son and I look after him alone.
If you had to go through the new point system, would you get in?
I don't think so.
All the time I tell people from Romania to come here because you earn quite much. In Romania you don't earn like here.
Some business leaders welcomed the new rules. The government agreed to lower the salary threshold for visa applicants. It was going to be £30,000. But in the rag trade, many are likely to view the points-based system as a stitch-up. Simon Harris, ITV News, Haringey.